Hello, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, bringing you another one of our fantastic series today, bringing you our top 10 forwards, where we've already come up with some nice little conditions. Dylan Moore will not be named, boys, is, I believe, the consensus. Anyone? Consensus? No. But we are extremely happy to have DR, so Supercoach with DR, with us today. How are you today?
Excellent, gents. Thanks very, very much for having me on. I've been a fan from afar. You've been doing some wonderful things during the preseason, and very exciting to pop my Supercoach Insider cherry, if you'll say. So, looking forward to this one, boys. But yeah, not easy, that sort of 6 to 10 range for me.
And you were definitely headhunted for the forwards because I was like, hey, Dunkley has to be number one. I mean, is he number one for Chris? Who knows? But I thought we definitely cherry picked you for
Spoiler
this
alert.
episode as well. Yeah. I too like to live dangerously.
By
Um,
the way, I don't think that's a spoiler. I think everyone knows that Dunkley's like the forward number one, but I mean everything else is conjecture, right?
Everything else is conjecture unless you think someone's going absolutely big. But Chris, obviously here today. Hi, Chris. No
How's it going?
Swizz today. Swizz has a few family commitments and such on at this current point in time, but I believe he might be joining us for some other segments. Chris, do I dare ask what everyone's averaging in your forward line this time around?
I'll give you a range. How does that sound? So I've
Sounds
got
wonderful.
no, it's not that bad. I've got from 96 to 120. That's not bad, right? That's pretty good. And there's a big gap between one and two. So I suppose it was 96 to 110, and then I've put 120 on Dunkley, but honestly, I think he probably goes 130 to be completely honest. So I don't, yeah, 120 is conservative. That's my new approach.
So the highest averaging player overall, then, pretty much is what you're saying.
Yeah, I am. I definitely think that Dunkley will average the highest this year in Supercoach. I think that's, um, yeah, I don't really need to elaborate at this point. We'll go into that later. How does that sound?
Sounds wonderful. All right, let's get straight in. Top 10. This is going to be a little bit hairy, I think, from 10 to 6. But DR, who comes in at your 10th highest averaging forward?
Look, to be honest, mate, it was like throw the dart at the board because there's so many blokes that were running through here for me. But look, in the end, I've gone with a bit of a key forward, the only key forward you'll see on this list, and that's Jeremy Cameron. So, look, I hate selecting key forwards. I think he's probably, as I said, borderline that top 10, but he should go around 90 like he did last year. He regularly hit the scoreboard, obviously plays for a top team in Geelong, so I think he'll get enough of it. Should have a few nice spike scores, I think, and then obviously a few lower dud type scores, which is just the life of a key forward. But look, when it's all said and done, I think he'll just be around the mark, mate.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think. Look, I haven't got him in my 10, but only because he was literally just outside. I have him averaging around about 95, so a little bit actually higher than you, but my top 10 starts at 96. But I do have about 4 or 5 guys that are about that 95 level. There's quite a few that would fit in that mold. And obviously, with Cameron, he scores well when he's forward. He scores well in the midfield, but because when he is forward, sometimes you just have that dud game. It's just not going to mean that he's going to be able to be consistently high, which is why obviously I've just dropped him slightly out. But look, I think if you love Geelong and you love Jeremy Cameron and that's what you want to go with, then great. Like, I'm not against that. I think there's obviously a lot better options in the forward line, but yeah, he's not going to be terrible. That's for sure.
See that sound that you're hearing, Chris? That's the Oscars where you keep rambling about shit no one cares about. They just create a sound to like move you on. Is
No,
that what
I'd
that
actually,
was?
I was actually starting off the music and the
Or
slow
when
music in the
people
background.
when
Get
people
the
talk
orchestra
Jeremy
going.
Cameron and they talk Geelong, everything just gets wet all of a sudden. Is that I think we're
That's exactly
going.
right.
All right, so I don't have him in my 10 either. I actually don't even have him. I have him a low 90, and he's probably sitting more around like 13th, 14th for me. So
Yeah,
I've
so
got
but
again,
pretty similar.
speculatives. Chris, what have you got for 10?
Your favorite bloke, mate, Dylan Moore, is coming in number 10 for me. So and look, you obviously, I don't know you scoff, but like you've been proven that you're like, okay, maybe if he does have a role, then he's kind of a good pick. Like you can concede that if he does get CBAs throughout the season, he's going to score well. And like just as an example, in the preseason match, he only actually got 43% time on ground, but scored 70 with a PPM of 1.27 with 0% CBAs. So he doesn't necessarily
Ad
even
roll.
need.
bad
Yeah.
role, and you're trying to put him in your 10.
I'm
Do you know,
just
I actually
saying.
spoke. He spoke to the coach in the end of season meeting, and he was going through all the stats, and he's going, "Oh, hey, I got 5 CBAs here, I got 10 CBAs here," and he's like, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" More? Shut down. He said no, because fuck you, Dylan Moore, is what
I think
exactly happened.
he'll be used at times through the midfield, though. I'm pretty confident that he will be. Like, he's too good to just sit in the forward line all year. Like, he's far too good inside. Now, the thing with Hawthorn, obviously, is that they're developing their midfield. So, are they willing to? Do they want to win games, or do they want to just develop these players? Like, because he's a winner. He's going to go in the midfield and completely change their dynamic and kick goals from midfield, set up from midfield, and everything else. So, I love him as an option there, but because of where Hawthorn are at, I don't think he gets the role that's going to be able to produce a top, 105 or 110, like pickable numbers, especially at his price. But I still think he's going to go well enough to be valid. And I don't hate the pick from other people, but you just need to realize that there's going to be weeks when he's going to score 40 or 50. And then there's going to be weeks where he's going to get a good role and go 120 plus. Like, that is, unfortunately, the Dylan Moore roller coaster. So, what about you, DR? Where you said that you were a little bit liking towards the Dylan Moore pick?
Yeah, I went him at 9. I went him at 9, just
I like
inside the
it.
top 10. Look, it's all about the role, isn't it? Unfortunately, he's just not going to find himself in too many CBAs, if any. So, look, he was actually on the scrap heap a couple of years ago, close to actually being delisted. So, congratulations to the man for coming back this far. He seems to have really red hot starts to the game and then tends to fade out. So, if you compare his first half scores compared to his second half scores traditionally, yeah, he's not a great scorer, towards the end of the game. But look, anyone that's not playing, at least a part-time midfield role is going to find it tough, I think, to average enough to warrant a spot in our sides, mate.
Yeah, I agree.
Full disclosure, I don't hate him that much right now. He's a really good. No. As in,
You're coming around already, Betty.
he's a good player. All right, but it's more.
Hit the record for the
But
YouTube.
once I made that bet with Swizz, he's destined to cop my wrath, and that's just pretty much where we stand with that. So
I love it.
that's the music to stop talking about Dylan Moore. Okay, number 10 for me is again a little bit speculative, and I'm going with Zach Bailey, the old Brisbane boy. If there's someone who's primed, now my scope's not as high as Chris, and I think he won't be relevant because of all the DPPs coming in to kick him out of that. But if there's someone who's actually looking to be that X factor dynamic player, getting inside that Brisbane midfield in that little bit of a chop out sort of role, I expect Brisbane to win a lot of games, which means a lot of the pie there. And I think he's kind of in that scope now, in that age group where he could really take that next step. And I see him hitting that sort of low to mid 90s, optimistically, obviously. And again, at this point, it's a bit of a raffle where I'm looking at it going, well, do I want Bolton to kind of get into the top 10, or do I want Zach Bailey to kind of flourish and show that potential? And when it comes to the coin flip, I was like, stuff you, Bolton. You hurt me 2 years ago. So Bailey he can debut in a top 10 for me.
Oh, talking about irrelevant forwards, mate. I thought you were going to talk about Cam Rayner, but just Zach Bailey, hey, just throwing in another one there. There's so many irrelevant players at Brisbane, right, guys?
Well, again, anything outside the top 6 are nearly irrelevant, to be honest. So throw a bit of airtime to my boy.
Well, I was actually huge on him last year because there was all the talk of all the Zach Bailey midfield time, and we've seen the scores, right? He's got a huge ceiling. We know what he can do, but the roles just never arrived. And then obviously with the arrival of Dunkley, that midfield time's been shrunk up, and they look to be going with the big three out of the midfield, which is obviously going to be Neil, Dunkley, and McCluggage. He'll have about 50%. I'll be interested to see how they sort of weigh up that sort of fourth midfield rotation, what they're going to do with that. Is Jared Lyons ever going to be a first team player? Like, there's some questions that are still sort of left a little bit on the edge here with Brisbane for that sort of 4th, 5th mid spot, but I don't think Bailey's getting there, unfortunately. I think he's too valuable to them forward, and I think low 90s is something that he could do, yeah, sure, but he's not going to be shooting the lights out, unfortunately, in averages, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Interesting. Pick 9, DR. Who have you got?
Well, pick 9, I actually had our friend, or your friend, Ben, Dylan Moore.
Oh,
at
yes.
number 9 for me. So I think I can pass
Sorry,
that
you are
along,
correct.
unless you want to play the music before I do
No,
that.
and you
No,
are
we can go
correct.
back. Did you
Oh,
know
no.
that in the preseason game?
No. Let's not
No,
go
talk
back and
about
live
his
in that
PPM.
time.
No, I talked about his
Um,
1.27 ppm. Do you know who else has a 1.27 ppm? Rory Laird. Just so you know, just in case you're one.
Ooh. Ooh, there we go. Rory
I'm
Laird
just
levels
fucking with
now.
I am
Now
completely at fault in here, and you know why? Because I switched out the second you started
you did.
talking about him. I'm looking over here trying to find the cue music, and I was like, I do not care. And then next minute I re-ask you and prompt that conversation again. Chris, who's your number 9? Dare I ask?
Look, I just got Isaac Heeney. I mean, I think Isaac Heeney on a bad year is still going to average you close to 100. The thing with Heeney is he's never going to explode because the role's not there. He actually scores better as a forward, but that does obviously limit his scoring as well. And we've seen that he goes on these patches where he goes 130 every week for 4 or 5 weeks, and then he drops to 50s every week for 4 or 5 weeks. And that's just the life of Isaac Heeney as a forward. Unfortunately, and that mid time is now completely, I think, gone. I think that they should agree that he's way more valuable to them in the forward 50, and they have enough midfielders that they don't need him there. I think he'll still get a chop out here and there, but he's not going to be a permanent mid anymore. Now with Papley in there, now with obviously Errol Goulden going in there, Rowbottom stepped up. You know, they just don't really need him going through that midfield. So yeah, I think that I've got him as listed as about a 97 average, which is slightly below last year. But he's still going to be in that conversation. I think you can't really ignore him.
Ouch. I've got him a little bit higher. I've got him at 7th.
Okay.
Again, just for the, I know he lost his CBAs a little bit in the practice match. But he wasn't getting a whole heap of it last year. So, again, I just kind of expect him to hover around that point, and I'm not starting him because again, I think there's probably better options and better value. So, look, I like what he does. I like what he provides for Sydney, and yeah, just around that 100 mark, I guess, consistency being the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good segue into number 8 because he's actually my number 8, Isaac Heeney. So
Nice.
I traded him out for English last year, and it absolutely burnt me. English went on this
Oh, yeah.
downhill spiral. Heeney, I think, scored 3 tons in a row. It was an absolute killer. Look, decent ceiling, bit of a low floor at times. Scored 81 in the Pracky match, 13 touches, but didn't have his kicking boots on. Only kicked the 1-3, so may have even left a ton at the door there, I think. And he's one of those players, he could be on like 45 at three-quarter time, and all of a sudden a couple of goals
Bang.
and an assist here and there, and bang, he's almost on 3 figures already. And it can be frustrating at times when you're looking at these scores. You look at the scaling, and he's reached the ton somehow, and he's done absolutely bugger all, it seems. So, yeah, certainly one of Champion Data's love children, I think, similar to almost like a Bont. But, yeah, I don't think I'd realistically look to start him because I just want players with that midfield role.
Yeah, I think we'd love in a perfect world, we'd love him to have those dud scores just before their bye, and then he'd be
Yes.
like 450k, and you'd be like, this is got to be the perfect back end F6, or even maybe an F7. Is he forward mid this year, or is he still just forward? Is he
He's
forward
just
only now?
forward.
I think it might be. I got him
Yeah,
so
yeah.
cheap last year, and I was like, do I want to use my last trade to get in Heeney at a real low price from a DPP? And I had to do it that week because otherwise he was going to get priced out, or the person I was going to trade to him would have dropped cash. And lucky I did, because I think there's a week where, like say Brody went really low, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just avoid that 60, and Heeney can get on the field, and then bang 100. And then I just kept loopholing 100, 100, 100, and pretty much helped me finish the year very strongly in the end.
Yeah, I think what I love about Heaney is as a non-owner, you're sort of really rooting against him. And as an owner, you're just like waiting for him to that ball inches the 50. You're like, where's that beautiful blonde hair? Where is it? Where is it? He flies out of nowhere with his beautiful hands. But there is nothing more frustrating as a non-owner than watch him go huge. I've seen it like when you had Heaney last year, buddy, at the start of the year, did you? Or I
Yeah.
remember a
Yes.
lot of people were like on him when he was going big, and I was just like, man, what end already? And I'm like,
Painful.
I was like, and the painful thing is like, you're like, oh, do I trade him in? And you can't, because his role was still shit, but he was scoring so well. So I'm like, well, if I trade him in, I'm going to get a 50. I guarantee it. I'm going to trade him in for 600K and I'm going to get a 50, like guaranteed. And so
I
I think
traded him
people did do
in
that.
the round. I think they played St Kilda, and he did get a 50 or whatever it was.
Oh,
Ouch. It hurts.
Eh.
and that is just the life of the Heeney train, guys. So I would say that part of the appeal to having him is just watching him play because he is obviously a brilliant footballer. And so part of me, as just an avid football watcher, just wants to get him just because he's a fantastic footballer. But obviously the head says, no. Don't do that to yourself. You don't want to be on
Something's
that
going to
ride.
happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's your
Um,
9, Chris. I think my 9 now, because you had
Yeah,
Heeney
yeah,
there,
yep.
which was DR's 8. I have Darcy Cameron at my number 9.
Ooh, okay.
More optimistically hoping, I guess, he gets that role and he's fit enough to kind of, knock Cox out of the equation a little bit, cock block him, if you will, and and do well. I was saying knock Cox
Fuck,
out of the way. That's
did you
the
have that
Cox
written down
block.
as like cock block joke winner?
Well, I said knock him out of the way. And if he does do that, I think he can go sort of that 95 range. And for me, I think I wasn't willing to put a key forward in there because most of the time it's forward mids or forwards that play a lot of midfield time that make it, or ruck DPP. So I didn't really want to include a key forward and Dylan Moore, which left me a bit thin. Not gonna lie. 8 for Chris.
Just on Darcy, I had to have him at 95 average
Oh.
too. I just have a different range.
Oh, right.
But
Okay,
it's all
yes.
going to depend on obviously Cox and what his role in the team is. Now, in my opinion, Cox is 1 or 2 bad games out of not being in the side. So it's a wait and see. Because if that happens where they go, does Darcy Cameron is at 80% ruckman or similar, and they're doing the mixed day chop out or similar, then I think he's kind of a must have. He's going to go 105 plus. So I think timing your run with someone like Darcy Cameron is important. Just keep an eye on it during the season. But is he a must start? Probably not. He's not going to hurt you though if you do have him. I think he's probably going to hover 90 anyway, regardless. But I think that on the games that he doesn't have Cox or a second ruckman with him, that he'll go big and it'll be worth having. So have you considered Darcy in your team, buddy?
Oh, absolutely. I was running with him for most of the preseason.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
just, those injury niggles just put me off a little bit. And another thing I was slightly concerned about, particularly maybe at the start of the year, is given the fact he's had a bit of an interrupted preseason with the new sub rule, if they do look to get a big man off, maybe if Cox is a little bit fitter at the moment, is it Cameron the one that comes off early? Long term, I think a fit Cameron certainly gets the nod 100%. But just with those injury niggles in the preseason, it did have me bring a few concerns up to me, mate, and didn't quite go there in the end. Paid up in the ruck in the end.
So what I noticed last year, which is I think how they'll run it this year, is that they go in with the idea of Cameron being their sort of center bounce ruck to begin with, right? He's going to be their number one. However, they'll evaluate it during the game and see who's getting the one up in the ruck. And if it's shifted to Cox and Cox is having his way with whoever the other ruckman is, they will literally give him more ruck time as the game progresses and put Darcy forward more, or vice versa. And that's what I was finding last year. So my worry is exactly what you said. There's a game where Darcy's not having a great time in the ruck, but Cox is killing it. All right, well, we may as well just sub off Darcy at 3/4 time instead of subbing off Cox or whatever their initial plan is. And they are not afraid to be fluent with that. Whereas I know other teams may be, okay, this is our number one ruck and we're going to stick to that. I don't think that they make that decision before the game day. They go, okay, we've got 2 ruckmen. We're going to start with Darcy, but we're completely open to how their roles are going to evolve. And that's how they were, especially towards the end of the last year, which is why a lot of his scores were suffering because Cox was taking, majority of ruck contests around the ground instead of Darcy Cameron. So, so it'd be interesting. But again, if Cox ends up not in the team, that theory goes completely out the window and you got to reevaluate. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds
do we have that
good.
music again, buddy? Or
No, you can.
Ben doesn't mind talking about Cox and Cameron, so
Yeah.
that's
classic Ben not minding about talking about Cox. I get it.
No.
That makes sense.
The only problem with Darcy Cameron is his 2 first names, but that's
never cut the bloke with 2 first names.
neither here nor there. So what are we up to? Are you 7? Or
Well,
who's
hold on.
DR?
I
You
think
got
I was
7?
8.
Chris, have you done
No,
8?
I gave
You're
my
a-
8, which was Heeney. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
we've already
which was mine.
discussed him. So I think it might be Chris for 8, is it?
Yeah, so yeah, it is actually. So I have Jack Zeeble at number 8, boys.
JZ.
So
And you said Bailey was bad. Zeeble's like, oh,
look,
sorry, I forgot. 2020 stats. My apologies.
it's 2021, buddy. It's not even the COVID year. All right. So calm it down. All right.
So what you're saying is it's an eclipse. Either way, I get the year wrong. Who cares?
I mean, I think it was 21 game sample size where he averaged 107 in the forward line. I think that's pretty good. Actually, sorry, in the defense line as a forward in Supercoach. I mean, is that pretty good? Like, I don't know, where would that put somewhere in the rank of top forwards this year? Mate, I don't know. You tell me.
And then this year he'll come dead last. Yeah, but he had a great year though. Did it go in? Did it go in? Did it go in? Was that good?
Oh, look, North are still going to get spanked. They're shit. They are completely terrible. Their backline's a little bit in shambles at the moment. He seems to be the only one that's not injured right now in the backline. Did you see Taron Thomas returned to the VFL, then like did an ankle, and he's clearly not playing round 1.
I heard very unfit too, Taron Thomas.
Yeah.
Not AFL already, I heard.
And Aaron Hall, I don't think is going to be ready for round 1 either. So he's going to be the main distributor early, and it's just going to be this like same old. He had, in a game where the Bulldogs had 1,912 Supercoach to 1,300 or something stupid. He was the second top player with only 15 disposals but 13 kicks, and shared the kick out. So he's not going to get 100. Like, he's not going to get majority kick outs like he did, which is why I actually have him averaging about 98. So not 107, but 98. I think there's going to be weeks where he's going to go 120, 130, bro. Like, I'm not even joking. And you're going to be like, shit. And you're going to be that guy that goes, oh, I hate those guys that got onto Jack Zeeble at 349K. That's what's going to happen. And people are and I'm going to be like,
well, what do you think he's averaging? What do you think he's averaging?
About 98.
Okay, so you got 98 problems, but a top 10 ain't one.
Oh, you're just doing. You're on the. He spent way too long on TikTok today, and he's just doing these little TikTok shorts to make himself funny. Good one.
See, the difference is previously Zeeble would kick the ball to someone else who would then butcher it, and it would come back to Zeeble. That's why
you seem to think that North are somewhat better, and they're not going to do that. Like, they are terrible. Terrible. The only thing that's changed is that what Clarkson, and we really haven't seen what his coaching style and philosophy, especially from defense, is going to be like. But trust me, mate, when they're getting pumped by 10 goals, and Clarkson's in the coaching box saying, "Can we just control the ball in the back line for a little bit?" You're going to see junk time Zeeble at his absolute best, and then you're going to be like, "Damn you, Mustafa." That's what you're going to be like.
No way. They'll say, Archer, Goda, just go and have a go. Go and just get some pill. No, look, I think it's definitely possible he does well, but 98. Oh.
That's a 9-point reduction on his previous average in that same position.
Yeah. And now he's like, what, 38? Anyway, do you have Zeeble anywhere near your top 10, do you?
I had him in the mix for that 10th spot, so it was out of like a Cameron Zeeble type, even a Bruin type. I was contemplating because I was getting desperate around the mark. But look, he actually did make his way into my side when news came through that he was looking to go down back again. But I just think there are a few blokes where I can say around 30K that I'd probably prefer to have. And when I say prefer to have, look, maybe if I had the extra money, I'd go up to Jay-Z, but no, not really in my plans. But I think there's a world where he can be around the top 10. I don't think it's going to be 107. I'd say between an 80 and a 90 would be my personal prediction for him anyway.
So what you're saying is you toyed with the idea of having him in your top 10, but then better judgment is what you went with. And you went, you know what? He's that bad. We're going with a key forward. I don't normally do this, but Zeeble, key forward.
So what he did was, we're not going to use historical data to represent a case. We're going to use a best guesstimate. And then we're going to go from there.
Chris, I swear to God.
Good. That's fine, guys. I get it. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
The way you justified, you use this in your bedroom.
Clary's going 130 again. It's fine.
No. I use the foolproof play. I do this, and then I do this. Like, you justify way too much.
That's what I do. How else do you think? How do you exit? No.
Do you turn it
How-
off? No. Okay. Paul or Liza?
How else am I supposed to own Twitter if I cannot justify my opinion on absolutely everything?
No, that's fair enough. Moving on. Okay, so
You're
we're up
number 8,
to
buddy, I think.
7. I think we're up to 7s.
Yeah, you're 8. What was your 8?
My 8 is Cunners.
Okay. Yep.
Similar reasons. Look, I don't really like him that much, but he, for me, has the actual scope to get into that mid 90 sort of range, and that's pretty much where I had him. So he had, I think it was about 28 CBAs in North's game there, and if he gets it together, and I think the more that he kind of plays throughout the season, I think he will improve. And I think if you're getting that many CBAs as a forward mid, they play West Coast round 1 and is it Hawks round 3 or something or other. So he could just go bang bang. And he's someone who I've kind of avoided putting him in my side, but now, if I don't start Clary, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, what can I do with those funds? And then that would mean me possibly bringing him into my side.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I have Cunnington in my team, so he's my
Ooh.
7, so this sort of gives you that. But yeah, I mean, he had 27 disposals, 69% CBA, so he was actually second to LDU as their primary mid. I'm not sure that he gets 69 in the real season. I don't think that's realistic, but I'd also then think, well, if he's not going to get that in the real season, why are they giving him 69% CBAs in a practice match as a guy coming back into the system? That doesn't make sense. So I don't really know where I sit with it, but what I do know is, so from his score for his 27 disposals, he absolutely butchered the ball in the first quarter and was on a negative DT to SC ratio. I think it was like negative 20 or 25 in the first quarter. I think it was on 9 Supercoach and 25 DT. So he was behind in terms of his score, and he had 0 tackles for the entire game. I don't remember the last
Wow.
time I saw Cunners not have a tackle. So I just think that was just like, I'm in a preseason game and I don't care.
Yeah. Wasn't many
Um,
marks or anything either. I don't think he was
No,
really pushing
but
to
he's
try
still
and be
got
open.
27
Yeah.
disposals. And I'm like, and then I looked. So what sells me more on the Cunners pick is looking at last year's breakout guys, and there's not really any in that sort of 400 to 450K that I like outside of Cunners.
Mm.
And I think he just fits a lot of mold. Guys like Hewitt last year, or even Cripps at the 450 mark. Sicily was just under 450. There really isn't anyone sort of screaming that I'm going to be a top 6 option from those guys, or around about the mark that's going to be a breakout that people are going to want to jump on, but they didn't. And I think that he's got the pedigree, scoring power, role to be able to do that. At 420 is pretty low risk, and he's also a guy that if, say, Fife pumps out or Bruin goes ham or whatever, you can go quite easily down, bank the cash, or put that in something else. So yeah, very comfortable with that pick. I've actually got him at F5, believe it or not, and Zeeble at F6. So I'm running a really stacked forward line and saving elsewhere in the park. So yeah, it works.
I don't mind the exit strategy I was going to say there, mate, because starting that high price player, it's so easy to go down to a Fife or Bruin, whoever else you need to, if there's another mid price that stands out. So I think that price point is a little bit awkward, but it's friendly in the fact that it does give you a pretty easy exit strategy if you need it early on, mate. And he's actually my 7 as well.
Nice.
102, 102.3, 108.7 from 2019 to 2021. I wouldn't say premium. They're not premium midfield numbers of the
No.
past, but being able to be selected as a forward at the price, they're certainly premium numbers. I'm not saying he'll go back to that. Look, I reckon this bloke, if he played country football, he'd kick 150 goals as a forward. I think he's just got
you can't get an arm around him. The guy's
just unstoppable he'll be, in the country, I think. And I reckon that's where he'll end up. And, I can imagine him just dominating, getting on the tinnies afterwards, with the local lads. And it just seems like that sort of a bloke.
Smash 1 liter of milk as well to match that GWS guy. He's like, milk farmer. Like, let's go. We'll get into it. Yeah, really interesting. So I guess Cunnington. So are you running fairly deep in your forward line?
Me?
DR, or are you? No, DR. I know you are. You got Zeeble at F6, Chris. So we know what you're thinking.
Originally I was, but I'm only going the 3 keepers at the moment. There's been a bit of a late change to my structure, and I've just got an extra premium mid in, mate. So I've been going 4 for basically most of the preseason, but just cut that down to the 3 at this stage.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of flexibility And I think a lot of teams are fairly similar, either running like one type or another type or a bit of a blend in between. It's funny. I just had someone comment like, "Oh, such a vanilla team." And I'm like, well, yeah, you pick the best premiums, you pick the best rookies, and you pick the best mid prices. Like, what the fuck do you want from me?
The
You
teams are
know, I
vanilla
said,
because guys like DR and Supercoach Insider and all these teams have,
talk about it. Yeah. And
have put all of the research in, and then all these people like follow us, and then like, I'm sorry,
those
like,
that watch and listen get a lot of
yeah,
similar stuff, whereas you get the casual player aren't going to be picking, you know, a green or all these other types as well. I said, that's fine, mate. It's vanilla. I said, but guess what? During the season, I'm going to add some chocolate topping. I'm going to add some nuts. I'm going to add some freckles. I
That's it,
said,
mate.
then
and
it'll get a
probably
bit
some
more.
cocks as well, apparently. So.
Oh, no, that's what you wash it all down with, Chris. Oh, what
Nice
is
can of
going
cock.
on?
Oh, DR
Right, so
comes and it goes to shit.
hey, the
It's
innuendo,
fantastic.
it's safe. Okay, so what are we up to? So that was your 7. That was Chris. That was your
That was
Cunners.
my
Was
7
your
as well.
7?
Yeah,
So does that mean we're up to we're up to
your 7
DR's 6? Is it?
What was your
was it?
7, Benny?
My 7 was Heeney's. That's already been rubbed
Oh
off
yeah,
Oh,
okay, yep,
already done.
6.
off the
All
board.
right, so my 6, yeah, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, boys, but I've got Zach Butters at 6. So 96.2 last year, career high games last year, which is also good. Decent CBA rate for the first half of the season. That dropped off a little bit. I've got a feeling that JHF may slightly impact him this season and his CBA rate, but we know that Boak's obviously out of that midfield now. There are some minutes up for grabs. Look, this is my main concern with Zach Butters, and I love watching this bloke, but he's just got such a kamikaze style of game that
Mm.
every contest he goes into, he's only a little fella. I just almost put my hands over my eyes, and it's that durability concern. I know he played the 20 last year, but it just seems pretty unlikely to me that he's going to go close to playing 23 games this year. So love him as a player. Think he's got all the tools to do well, but that durability just slightly scares me off, which is why he gets pushed down the order just a little bit for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But I mean, I have him slightly higher in my ranking. I've got him at 5, but I mean, he's probably of that sort of top 4 guys. I do have him as the last guy. Unfortunately, now for exactly the reasons you said, there is some great stats. However, with Port that we actually went through on the Port podcast, that he's out of those sort of top 3 guys, which we don't really know too much about JHF, or what we do know is he's playing a lot of CBAs at this stage. He's the one that can have the biggest super coach score with the least amount of CBAs. So he probably only needs 30% to get a decent average out of it. But I think there'll be games where he'll have 0. Yeah, I think that those games are the games that he can go 40 or he can go 140, depending on what his output is, because he's such a damaging forward. And that's how Port will use him. Is that some weeks he'll be in the rotation, other weeks he won't be, and it's going to be based on what they have available. And so for that reason, I do have him averaging a little bit less than what I really had him at about 110 at the start of the preseason. I was thinking he's going to go crazy. I've sort of rounded him down to about that sort of 104, 105 mark. But yeah, I think that he's just over that 100 barrier, and he's going to be in the mix. So he's not a terrible guy, but also body durability, etc. I don't know if I can do that when there is other guys that are going to provide value for cheaper price. Doesn't really make sense as a pick to me, but he's going to go all right. He's not going to be terrible. So yeah, what do you think about Butters there, mate? Where you got him?
I have him at 6 as well, DR. So
We
similar
didn't
reasons.
we didn't like organize this list ahead of time, by the way. Like this is all. I feel like we're very very close with pretty much everything except for Dylan Moore. So
Yeah. I was
Easy.
actually thinking that I had that I would be the weird one having Cunnington actually higher, and whether you guys would even have him in your mix. So that was quite surprising to me. And yeah, obviously the Heeney factor, but all of us had him sort of sliding a little bit, but to different degrees. And yeah, so for me I think he has the capability and scope to push 100 and 3 to 105 or whatever as well. But it does come down to the a fitness if he can keep his body running cherry ripe and also that CBA mix. Yeah, I think you were right because I think it was about 30 to 50% CBAs. He still went really
yeah,
well. I still think he gets a bit of a shake, and for me, I think it's just around that sort of 100 mark. I think for Butters. So That's enough thinking on Butters. I think it's pretty much safe to say. So he was my 6. Chris, who was your 6 then? If he was your 5?
I've got Goulden at 6. So obviously, part of the reason why I'm selecting him, obviously, over someone like Butters, is I do think that I'm trying to be realistic with my expectation of him because I don't. He's not going to get 70% CBAs like he has over these first preseason games. That's a fact. We know that's not going to happen. What do I realistically think that he gets? Somewhere between, say, I reckon 35 to 45%. I don't think it's going to be crazy or 50% or something like that. And so that's why I've sort of, tempered my expectations. I do think that if he's goes to that, I'm a mainstay midfielder in that top 3, then it's all hell breaks loose and he could go 110 plus. Like he's got the ability to. Part of his skills is his kick to handball ratios is like 2.4, and he's an absolutely like the laser beam of a kick. But he knows how to find the ball, knows how to kick goals, he knows how to position himself. We saw that in his rookie year, coming out and just absolutely busted onto the scene. So the scoring potential and pedigree is there with the right role. He only had 10% CBAs last year. So yeah, with a rise to say 35 to 45%, I do see him raising his average up to that 100 plus mark, but I just don't see it as a absolute huge one because I just can't see him having that role that we want him to have. I think we're sort of all looking at it going, oh yeah, he's going to be the number 1 guy. I don't think that that's realistic. So yeah, I've just tempered a little bit. I've got him at 6. He's still in my team, by the way. I think it's good value. It's also one that you want to be on, just because if he does go crazy, you don't want to be the one left behind now because you think he's in like 33% of teams or something stupid now. Like it's ridiculous. So yeah, do you guys have him in your? I assume he's in your top 10, surely at this stage, or
Yeah, I've got him at number 5, just ahead of
oh
Butters.
yeah,
Just ahead of Butters for me. Look, I don't currently have him in my side, actually, Errol
okay,
Goulden. Look, very, very tempted by him, but I've decided to go with a little bit of a different structure. Look, it's going to be really interesting to see the Mills impact. I don't think it's going to be so detrimental that he shouldn't be an okayish type selection. Look, one thing I haven't found too many people that actually agree with me on this, but I think there is actually a chance that he cops some fin attention in round 2. I think that probably the initial plan is going to be to go to Warner.
yep,
I don't know if they'll look to tag Mills. I don't know what they've done historically there, but with Mills, I think he's a harder player to tag, being that contested type beast. But I think Errol might be taggable. And even if the plan isn't to go with him at the start, if they go with Warner and Errol gets 10 possessions and kicks a goal in the first quarter, are they really just going to let him continue to roam free like that? I'm not too sure. After that 188, opposition teams are going to be all over Errol Goulden, I think. And I'm not saying he's going to cop a tag every week, but he'll certainly, I think, attract a really, really good defender, if not their best small defender. We've got Papley down there who may possibly take that. But I think there are a few question marks still on the pick. And I think that some people may need to just temper their expectations. I still think he's going to be a solid selection. I've obviously got him in my top 6 forwards for the year. But yeah, I don't think we should expect too many more 188s, but super talented player. And I think that he'll get enough CBAs to get, just over that 100 mark, I think.
Yeah, I
yep.
think he's looking at that sort of even 50% CBA. I think would be very realistic
Oh,
with
50% would
Mills.
be in
Yeah,
that.
well, it's
Like
still enormous.
that
He
would
went
be
from 10%.
insane. And then
Yeah.
he's getting tagged. He's that absolute
Yeah,
100% getting tagged. He's going to put up 150 in the first week, and he's going to getting tagged in round 2.
but how good is that for Sydney though, and Sydney fans when you have because it would have been Mills that would have been tagged previously, and I know he did
Nah,
and had some fairly
it'll
quiet
be
games
Warner for
previously.
sure.
But yeah, Warner's now come through as a really damaging midfielder type, so you try and shut him down. So I think it's kind of nice for Mills to now be able to actually have that freedom as a player. And Goulden as well. I think Hawks would actually kind of shut him down even midway through quarter 1 if they didn't. They go, oh, we'll start with Warner next minute, halfway through the first. Goulden's got 6 touches and a goal. They're like, oh, he's on fire, and let's try and clamp him now. For me though, I didn't have him in my team reveal yesterday, and he's someone that I would look to have into my team. And it's more of a case of if he goes 100 or around 100, I think you could back in another premium in another line ahead of him if you wanted to. So, DR, if you wanted another midfielder, and you would pretty much go, okay, well, it's my midfielder against Goulden, and then it's not so bad. So then you wouldn't really get hurt out too much. They have the first buy as well. So if he's doing well, you could just pay up 520, 550 or whatever you need to do and get him after their buy is also a very good strategy. So for me, where it does hurt you though is if he does come out and for me, I don't know Chris, but he seems very Petrarca-esque in he just looks like he has it on a string and very damaging, particularly forward of center. In his first year, he had 3 scores over 127 in his first year of AFL footy. Last year, he had 4 scores over 113. And that's with 10% CBAs. So when you actually put a player like that into the midfield where they can really do damage from CBAs forward of center, he's someone that I believe if I don't start him, I might actually just go and he gets like 110 average or something early on. And then I'm scratching my head going, why did I actually not get on this guy because of that hurt factor?
Yeah, and how many teams is he in, guys? I haven't got this sheet open right now, but yeah, he's
30 odd
now
percent, I think.
yeah, it's now he's one of the highest owned forwards. He's in more teams than guys like Coniglio, and I think the only guys ahead of him are Dunkley and Taranto. I'm pretty sure. I think 'cause even Rozee is in less teams than Goulden. So yeah,
Yeah.
huge hurt factor at the moment. I do concede where both of you guys are coming from in terms of not starting because there's valid strategy around that anyway. There's also a guy that you could round 3 correct trade to him if you've got a player that you're sort of holding there. Maybe you have Coniglio, he goes a couple of soft ones, you go down to him, you bank 80k in round 3 after 2 big scores or whatever it may be. That there could be a strategy there as well. Like I was saying, with someone like a Cunners, starting with the higher price, and then you can jump down if you need to. This similar tactic could apply. So there are ways around. I don't think he's a must start. We also just don't know the role. So we're all sort of jumping before we can really see some hard evidence of what role he actually does have. So I see the validity in not going that way. For me, part of the reason also that I have him in my side is price, and it just fits perfectly with what I've currently got. But I can see if I do change that at some point, then I could change my entire structure forward, and he might not be there. So yeah, I think
Also watched
it's
the whole
valid
game,
both sides.
Chris. You were raving about him. It's the best game of footy I've ever seen. Like just absolutely raving about him.
Yeah, he was
You're trying to
ridiculous.
add like, oh, it's price and it's the his
Did you
role,
if you
but
want,
really,
dude, go watch the game. You've got KO, go watch the game.
really, the ego's
Honestly,
getting involved. Yeah, he's
dude,
in 40
just watch the
between
game.
40 to 50,000 teams at the moment. So
I
that
think
is
he
quite
had
a lot.
there was so many times where he got involved multiple times in a single chain. So he'd kick it, get the handball, receive handball over the top, receive the handball back for another kick into the forward line. Like I was just like, this guy just understands how to find the ball, Dacos-esque in that manner, where he just knows where to position himself to receive the ball to have another impact forward. And because he's such a good user, they always want to give it back to him. So it's like he has the best of both worlds. It's insane.
Chris, pick your audience, mate. It's Ashcroft S.
It's
Absolutely.
Okay, none of
Benny.
this Dacos Collingwood bias, right?
No.
Ashcroft S. Pretty much told Dacos how to run it last year. Hey?
and so exactly where you're leading into, though. Obviously, Mitchell's already shown that he's happy to, doesn't care how young the player is or if it's a preseason game, he's happy to tag someone. So if he sees him getting off the chain, he's going to go to him. So that is true.
Very good compliment. So he was your 5th, was it, DR?
He was my 6th
He
and
was
DR's 5th.
number 5 for me.
Yeah, and number 5 for me too. So that's pretty much Butters and Goulden, pretty much the old flip. This one, I wonder it's going to be very similar as well. So what have we got for number 4?
This I found really tough. So for me, they're a clear top 4. I've gone with Stephen Coniglio. So post Leon average was 111 from last year. Absolutely killed me. So I traded him out before that massive score, before I think he went in a tear for 3 weeks, end up trading him back into my side. So absolutely burnt from him last year, but looked okay without being outstanding in the Pracky game. I think it was around 60% CBAs, but did cop a knock. Only low 60s time on ground, so that CBA rate could have been a little bit higher. But for me, he's got a massive ceiling, which I really, really like. I think with, obviously, we know what's happening in the GWS midfield now. 2 guys have gone. Does he spend a little bit more time in there? I'm not too sure. I think there was an interview with the GWS coaches, might have been an assistant coach, that said, look, we want to get him back to being an elite midfielder, but also he's got some really good tools up forward as well. So we also want to utilize those. So I
He
think he'll
was, yep.
spend definitely a mix between the midfield and the forward line. But the other three blokes, for me anyway, probably just have a little bit more upside than Cogs at this stage. But I think he could be a solid selection in his side. But yeah, it was tough to put him fourth. Could have been a little bit higher, but that's where I've settled just for now, boys.
No, look, I have him at third, and I think it's probably a splitting hair thing, but for the exact same reason, I don't see him going 111, which is where obviously that was his post Leon average. So, and for that exact same reason, of the three guys, who Tom Green, Kelly, and Coniglio, they've flagged him as the guy that's going to be the bit part forward, and the other two guys are going to be mainstay midfielders. So that's going to reduce his output somewhat. Don't get me wrong; he's always been able to score as a forward, which is why he'll spike games anyway, and maintain it. But he's also going to have those lower games. So I was thinking, okay, it's the guy that's. This is why I actually don't have him in my team. So he's the one out of the big four I don't have, and it's because he's the guy that is also. Don't get me wrong; he's going to be able to price you out if he goes on a real hot streak. But he could also have 3 or 4 games sub 100 and be available to pick up closer to 500k. And he's the most expensive guys to start with. So it's like, well, where do you just sort of got to cross your fingers and hope. And I know that GWS have a great run to start. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard going, and I won't have the cash to go up. So he's a guy that I'm sort of really, really
Well,
hoping
Zeeble
and
down,
skying.
Cunnington up, problem solved in 2 trades, Chris.
Nah, it's not going to
Um, and
happen.
I think I agree with you. I actually have him at third as well, and the reason being is that high scoring, high impact, good role, and he's in third ahead of fourth simply because we talk about that impact. He has better disposal and better impact than my fourth ranked player, which should give Chris a good understanding because I think Chris has the exact same based on
Yeah.
disposal. Cogs is third, and the other guy fourth.
Yeah, so my fourth is Taranto. So I assume
Yep.
that's yours. And
Yep.
I've got him at around about 106 average is what I see. He's going to be somewhere between 105 to 110. So I had an argument with a guy I love arguing on Twitter or YouTube or
You tried
whatever.
to argue me, remember?
Just
And
try.
I
Yeah.
didn't take that bet. I put it on Twitter and I said, does he average over 105? And literally it came out 50-50. And I was just like, well, what can I do with that? I don't know what to do
Like,
with that.
he's a guy that can he's one of those guys that can struggle to ton up with 30 disposals. And even like last week, he had 33 touches and 8 marks for only 122. It's like that's not normal. Like like if Clayton Oliver had that, or if Jack McRae had that, or if Rory Laird had 33 and eight marks, like they would be on 140, 150. Like they're not on the same level in terms of midfielder. And there's a few other concerns that I have personally with him, but I mean, part of the reason why I have him is the stupidly high ownership. I don't think he's going to price anyone out. I think he's always going to be available somewhere between, say, 500 to 550k. He's going to drop a 60 score. He just does that because he has bad games where, even though he's getting the pill, he's turned the ball over 10 times in the game and it's just not working for him. I've owned Taranto, I reckon, 3 of the past 4 years. Every time thinking this is going to be his year, and every time he's just completely fallen. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a difference now, so he's going to be a primary midfielder. But even I think he only had 65% CBAs. I was thinking that was going to be closer to 70 to 80%. So that's my first concern. Second concern is Richmond ruck contest. They averaged over the last 4 years, basically since 2018, they've averaged the second lowest ruck contest per game across the entire competition. So GWS conversely have averaged in the top 4 those entire years. So he's had this run where, yes, he's had less mid time, but he's probably had equal amount of ruck contests because it was like 15 to 20 less contests per game. It's a lot of ruck contests. Now, how much does that impact scoring when you're a contested midfielder? I can't tell you that, but it worries me. It worries me to the point where he's not going 110 plus. Like I can't see that. That's not a figure that in my head makes any sense. So for that reason, yeah, I think he's 105 to 110. Still good value at 500k, but he's not going to break the lights out in my opinion. So that's my Taranto rant, guys. Thanks for coming.
Yeah. And I'm also happy to get on Taranto because it'll be the last year you'll get him as a forward. I think, next year
Yeah,
he'll be a midfielder. So
Yep.
it's, you might as well get him while you can. And the same could almost be said for Nick Dacos, where maybe next year he's a full time mid. You never know. And especially for Taranto. Yeah, I've got him at 100 plus. So I think we're all kind of in agreement that he is definitely in that top four mix. So that's my four. That's my three. And I think yours was the flip DR, was it? So he was your third Taranto?
He was my third. He was my
Okay.
third. Yeah, look, it's only a small sample size, but over 6 games in 2021, when he had more than 60% CBAs, he did average 113. So, look, I agree with you guys. I think, Chris, you said around 105 to 110. I think that's probably where he sits for me. And the only reason why I had him just slightly ahead of Cogs was that I expect him to attend some more CBAs. Uh, in more of a midfield role, I think. But look, it's very very close call, and it was Cogs Taranto, Cogs Taranto. That's just where I landed in the end.
Yep,
Interesting. So that means our 1-2 is the exact same.
pretty much, I think.
Anyone that's done the elimination game, and very interesting. I actually listened back to the commentary, I think today, DR, on the draft that we all did. And I
Yes,
think
you
I
went early,
pick
didn't you?
pick 8. Well, because Dunkley was gone. And ideally I was like, well, really it was going to be Mills and then should have been Rozee. But I went Rozee, I think pick 8 just because all the forwards disappeared. And I think it took people a little while to realize that all the forwards disappeared because I think I got Rozee, Mills, and then it came back. And then I was like, okay, then I got Goulden and Butters. So pretty much 3 out of the 6 that we needed were forwards. And then all of a sudden you get a few rounds in, and then the comments start to come out. They're like, holy shit, there's no forwards. Like, who are you getting? Who are you going? And they're like, oh, like Tex
It was
Walker, or
Struggle Town.
oh, like, yeah, Struggle Town. And then meanwhile I was able to, get back in that draft and get these defenders that are averaging 95 or whatever, while everyone's trying to pick off 80 odd forwards or getting desperate. I think I saw someone like, oh, it was so early, like, I need to make a change and be desperate. And it was like, oh, going Braun or all these sort of speculatives from the draft year. So yes, Rozee, ladies and gentlemen, is the one we're talking about. Connor Rozee. Upside, I think, is huge, very silky, Bontempelli-esque, where I think when he gets on a game, he just has that real high ceiling already. 3 scores over 150 last year. We looked at the stats as well when he did get, I think it was over that, was it 40 to 50% CBAs? He just went absolutely huge.
Yeah,
And even then, those that are actually a little bit off put by Butters and Rozee together, I think it was their last 6 games that they both had over, I think it was 50% CBAs. Combined average was like 113 and a half. So they both did
Wow.
really well together as well when they had those CBAs in the back end of that year. And yeah, I just think the upside's there. He looks good as well. Went overseas during the off season and thought, well, Trav Boak just having the bloody Charlie Sheen venom or whatever he's going on and yeah, just trained with Boak and trained with, I think it was a couple others like Dersmer or someone rather. So went over and did the whole Boak training course in America. So he comes back and you just look at him. He just looks fit. He looks primed. He looks ready. And just that X factor with that high ceiling, I just think it's absolutely outstanding as far as a prospect to go 105 plus this year. DR.
Absolutely agree, and I think he's probably top 10 player in the comp for potential. I think I'm a huge fan of this guy. And got to remember to start off the season last year, I think he only averaged about 12% CBAs over the first 5 weeks, only for a 59 average year. So had a 107 average post buy. So that's real positive. So I think for me, there's actually a little bit of meat on the bone here, particularly due to that really slow start. I think it's really his midfield now. He's such a talented type player. He can rest up forward, still have an impact there when he needs to. I think it was on the weekend, was it something like 80%
yeah,
CBAs or
Yeah,
something
huge.
ridiculous like that? That's massive. So if I was Kenny Hinkley, I'd want him there right in the guts. X Factor, he's tough, quick, damaging, just got all the skills and all the tools to be, obviously one of the best players in the comp for me. So, pretty easy number 2.
yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. And I mean, the stats that we produced were like, okay, he can go 110 plus. As I think it was like over 53% CBAs on games that he did that. He averaged over 110. Now, and there was over a large sample size. I think it was like 14 games or something stupid. So that the range of error there, you got 30% CBAs based on what we've seen. Now, I don't think he's going to go 80%. So, but I was initially at the start of the preseason, I was like, oh, look, with JHF coming in and they've got Wines and they've got Boak and they've got Drew and they've got, Rioli was playing midfield at the back end of his career at West Coast. He's come in. What about Sin? What about Dersma? Are they playing wing? Are they playing a little bit inside? Jackson Mead. I was really worried about this mid split. So to have him go 80% just gives me this massive range of confidence going, okay, well, he's going to get 50. Like, I think that's pretty much a given.
Yeah.
Like, worst case scenario is 50 at this point. So the upside from that is we don't really know. We haven't seen, but it's such a safe pick. So yeah, I think he should be arguably the second most popular forward at his price as well. Like, I can't see a negative really. Like, I don't see a negative. I mean, I might be completely rose-colored glasses, so just a little bit of caution there. But yeah,
Puns
I
don't
love
look good on you, Chris.
I will say though. So my one thing with Rozee as well, I was burnt by him. I went super early. I actually had him in my team 2 years ago as a forward, and he completely. I think he would average like 45 in the first 3 games or something stupid. Like, it was terrible. Completely killed me. And then so I've been off Rozee ever since, and now I'm like, nah, got to get him back.
When did
So,
he hurt his ankle? Was it last season or the season before?
It was the
in?
season before. He was tipped for more
Okay.
midfield time, and then he hurt it, I think, in the practice match or something like that. But there was no report about it. Like, it was like, and then he was carrying it like the whole year, and it was a foot sprain or mid-foot sprain or something like that. And they basically just sat him forward for the whole year instead of playing him through the midfield. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think the good thing to know as well is that Port did lose those first opening, was it 5 rounds or whatever it was last year? And then they go, oh, we actually need to change something up. And it was, Rozee and Butters and that different dynamic in the midfield that actually made them look dangerous and more dynamic. Now, Ollie Wines can't play anywhere else. So he still keeps his role in there. I think Boak definitely can play somewhere else, which is where we'll see also a good segue. Shout out probably for a top 10, possibly forward if he gets enough CBAs for me. He just keeps keeping on. And they need to have Rozee. They need to have Butters. And I think even Horn Francis as a different, like an explosive mid sort of type with a big sort of body is kind of maybe try and help Butters from himself. Because Butters wishes he had Horn Francis's body. I mean, let's put it
Doesn't he?
that way.
Yeah.
He's got the mentality. He's got the mentality of like was it Liam Picken? Oh no, what's the
yeah,
dog's
the dog's
name?
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Picking, yeah.
Yeah. The mentality of him, but obviously Horn Francis just has the body for it. So it's like, hey,
So
you get in
true.
there and crash some bodies, and then that way Butters is like, yeah, I'll get the leftovers. Like, I'm tough.
I'll be honest.
let the
I'm going to
young guy
go
bash
a
me.
record here. JHF has half the talent of Jack Butters. There's no, I don't even bother comparing the two.
Twice the amount.
Twice the talent. Twice the talent. He will
Yeah.
never get his.
Reverse.
He's not going to play a role if he's never been an accumulator. He's the Rainer of this draft. I'm telling you, right now.
He's a Patrick Dangerfield.
No
He
way,
will
dude,
better
there's
than
no way.
Dacos is what they're ranking him as.
What?
Fact. Yeah. Even still.
You're just trying to wind me up. JHF has
I've
to
got
be the
it in
most.
my phone saying that even last year I was said to go and hunt him in keeper leagues because
know
the
what?
jury's still out and some believe he still will be better than Dacos, and that's after Dacos won.
In a few years, what we're going to be seeing is a headline that reads something along the lines of "Coke and tits" next to his name.
It's not Watts. He's not Jack Watts.
That's the equivalent number one. That's what it is. That's that. So he's going to be a 200 game all right player. That's what he's going to be.
Ah, man, I'm gonna have to tag Kane Corns into this one. I need some support up in here.
Oh, you've started the volcano.
I need some support up in here. Kane, help me out.
I just don't see it. Hey, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just the flog factor. He's just a super flog at the moment. But look, Sisley was a flog, and look what happened to him. Turned it completely around. So.
Speaking of flogging the dead horse, let's get into our number one, and I'll give you the honesty, because you can talk about him as much as you like.
Oh, this man, the 2023 Brownlow medalist, recruit of the year, Josh Dunkley. And in my opinion, I think someone may have mentioned this before, I think he could be the number one scorer this year in Supercoach. What a magnificent addition to the side. He was exactly what we needed, that defensively minded midfielder. And didn't he just do everything on the weekend? Hit the scoreboard, tackled, contested pill, got enough of it, shepherd for teammates, pressure acts. He just does absolutely everything. Now, he may not be getting those bonus hit-out points that he got at the Dogs, but look, that's all right with me. That's all right with me. We don't need him in the ruck. We've got the big Owen Fort there. But, I cannot speak more highly of a player. He's the ultra professional. We mentioned about Rozee going overseas last year. Dunkley does that most pre-seasons. He's gone over with the Bonson a lot of the time, and just a real professional, fit in really well at the club as well. Great culturally, a fantastic leader as well. So absolutely stoked, and he's clearly the D1, the F1, and the fact he's not in 100% of sides, I don't get it. I don't
Well,
get
he
it.
had to start running a lot more when he got to the Lions because those dogs were unfit, wasn't it? That no
No.
appreciation for running or
Had a bit
running
of a
in
dig, didn't he?
humidity.
Yeah, had a
Running
bit of
in
a dig.
humidity. But meanwhile, when you look at the Lions, you do have Sharp, who's like could have gone to the Olympics, I reckon, for like steeplechase or something or other, and then McCluggage and some of these other guys are extremely fit lads. So you kind of go from, who was winning the dogs time trials and everything like that? Do you know anyone that was like super, super fit at the dogs as
Ooh,
far as time trials?
I actually
I don't
don't.
really remember. No, that's what I mean. I don't
I'm
remember
not too
anyone being
sure.
outstanding. So maybe that's what he meant. Whereas before he was probably doing quite well as far as rankings with all the other guys in there. And then all of a sudden you get there and Sharp's like beating everyone by like 30 seconds. And you look at everyone else and, McCluggage and Bailey and all these other runners, you're like, holy crap. And then probably even the humidity as well in the
Yeah.
sun in Brisbane summer. He's there chugging down the oxygen, like, what's going on? Yeah, so I think he's extremely sensational. And we saw him, what did he average, like 128? Or he averaged really high as a pure mid for the Dogs a few years ago now. And
Very close to 130. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where I think the speculation comes into as him being the highest averaging player. The one thing that we spoke, Chris and I, about in I think maybe the Brisbane Lions pod or even earlier in the year, is that he's similar to Neil in that he's a really good lead up midfielder as well as that little chop out kick to kind of, you still want to keep moving forward and you're chopping off angles. So I think Neil and him will complement each other really well. But the difference is Dunkley's very tall. He's an active,
He is.
mobile, tall midfielder. So if you have someone who's really good contestively, minded, can tackle and the rest of it, finds those angles really well for these lead up options. And because he's taller, no one's chopping him. He's big, he's tall, he's strong, he's got good hands. So then you kind of those two are feeding off each other a little bit. And what we've noticed is after they kind of pick off a few angles, any opportunity they have, they're looking to go and they're looking to get on the other side of the opposition zone. So what you might actually get is him actually being part of some of these scoring chains as well, where they kind of like pick off a couple angles and then all of a sudden then go. And he might get on a few chains as well, I think.
Good
Yeah, I
point.
think also very important to have in your team purely from a VC or C option, because there's going to be games where he's going to go 150 to 200. Like he'll hit a 200 this year, I reckon. Like he will. I can't see him not doing that. He's done it twice or once and then very close, I believe, or
Maybe a
190.
196, yeah,
Yeah.
and a 200.
So yeah, again, right role. He's obviously got the ability to be able to go huge, and he's never had that right role until say now. The best thing about him, though, from a Brisbane perspective, is his ability to win his own ball. So he's not reliant on anybody else to pick up and rack the pill. His tackling and his inside contested work is as good as anyone else in the comp. I liken it to guys like Paddy Cripps in terms of his inside ability, and like that's obviously saying something. But that bigger body who can really body up against all those other bigger mids too, which means that he's going to be the guy that is going to be, if they don't win the tap and they're going towards him, and the other ruckman does, it's going to go to the guy that he's probably marking. It'll go to the Cripps or Bont or whoever is that big tall mid as that attacking midfielder coming through. So he's going to be around the ball and he's going to be able to shark taps as well. He's just going to it's everything. It's everything. He does everything in football really, really well. I'm surprised that the Dogs really let him go and they just didn't see him as part of their mix.
Triggered. Let him. Let him.
Well, ultimately, that's what they did basically, because and basically let him to go for peanuts
Well, it's
essentially,
good.
because
And the
the year
Lions had
earlier.
nothing. Yeah, Lions couldn't actually give them what they wanted. So it's really hard because it's like, hey, this player wants to go here. And they're like, wonderful, empty your pockets. And they're like, I'm empty.
Yeah, so
Um,
pockets to give, but
well,
I've got
and
this
it's,
bag of chips that I could give you. Would you like some of
I
that?
cop so
but
much
that's
abuse just
But
being
that's
a
the
Brisbane
downside.
supporter.
Yeah. But that's the downside of someone actually saying this is where they want to go. Because same thing with, West Coast and Fremantle. It's like Jackson. He's like, I want to go Fremantle. It's like, okay, but West Coast had pick 2 at the time. Or,
They were
you know,
offered,
it,
like didn't the Bombers offer a pick 6 the year before or something?
yeah,
Like
they
it was
offered something.
it was a top
Yep.
10 pick, right? Like, and
Yeah.
me and you, Ben, were saying if he goes to the Dons, he will be the number one mid in the comp. And that
Yep.
was there, at the Dons. We all know how the shit the Dons are. So he's going to be that at a top 4 club. Like, yeah, it's definitely going
Oh,
to change things for Supercoach this year. So yeah,
super good. Have either of you seen The Longest Yard?
yeah,
Yeah.
I have.
So no. So Jared Lyons, right, who is coming back from injury, right, and pretty much I see Jared Lyons as Brucey, and Dunkley is Nelly because Brucey's like, oh damn it, now I'm never gonna get a game. Dunkley comes into the club and Jared Lyons is like, oh, he's like, damn it, now I'm never gonna get a game.
Oh, you got to feel for him, and the Beast as well, and the Beast.
yes, of
Oh
course,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think as soon as the news came out, the Beast was pretty much like I think a 6-pack deep. He's just like, well, park footy at its best. Bless him. But no, that's what happens when you bring such a quality footballer in, and they're going to be hard to beat. I think this year, hopefully.
Yeah. Now, I suppose we'll roll off our top 10 quickly, but and then we're going to have a little bit of a chat just on potential forward DPP players that could eventuate during the year and where we think they will sit. But DR, do you want to go through your top 10 from 1 to 10?
So from 1 to 10, yeah, mate. So we had Dunkley at 1, Rozee at 2, Taranto at 3, Cogs at 4, Errol at 5, Butters at 6, Cunners at 7, Heeney at 8, Moore at 9, and Jezza Cameron at 10.
Nice. And I've got Dunkley, Rozee, Coniglio, Taranto, Butters, Goulden, Cunnington, Zeeble, Heeney, and Dylan Moore. 10.
Very nice.
And I've got
Benny, what?
Dunkley, Rosie, Cogs, Taranto, Goulden, Butters, Heeney, Cunnington, Darcy Cameron, and Zach Bailey is for me. And Swizz sent through his top 6, and he had Dunkley, Taranto in second. Of Richmond
Oh,
bias.
that is
Richmond
Rosie
bias. I've heard
third,
of it.
Coniglio 4th, Goulden 5th, and Heeney 6th. He left out
Ooh.
his top 4, and I might just rattle off his other 4, which are DPP, as a nice, good, and starting talking point here. Is he's actually got Petrarca, Gorn, Bailey Smith, and Grundy as people to watch for DPP. I'm going to throw Boak in that mix as well. Can you think of anyone else that might get DPP that could really push the top 6 on forwards?
They were pretty much the blokes on my list.
Yeah. I don't have anyone else that was not.
I don't think.
Grundy, maybe, as well, I should say.
Yeah, I was going to mention Grundy. I don't even know if I'd look to select him because, yeah, he's competing with Max Gorn. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Christian Petrarca, I think, is pretty realistic, given the fact he might be having a bit of a split with Cozzy Pickett. Boak, I think, should be pretty realistic to get that early on. There's no one really else that's really standing out to me, to be
Well,
quite honest, though.
one that was mentioned last night was Mills, but that could be more defensive DPP. But then in the practice match, he played a large percentage forward. I don't know.
I think
where that
Mills is
sort of
staying
sits.
midfield though. I think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. I think it was more to see how defense sets up without him actually being anywhere near the equation. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see the start of the year. I'm with you guys on Grundy. I don't even think he's top 6 to 10 as a forward.
Nah, I think he's
Because
averages low 90s anyway. So it's like,
yeah, so I
well,
mean,
what's the point?
If Cameron took a lot of it before and Grundy didn't do well, as a forward anyway, then he's not going to be kicking 3 goals each, and at least Gorn has other avenues to score. Now, Gorn's the one that I was hoping would get DPP, and I have floated, starting Gorn as my ruck, as far as at least that way if he gets DPP, then you're going to want him, right? So, but my big concern with him is if he has some CBAs in defense, some CBAs in the ruck, and some
Yeah.
CBAs forward,
Mm,
then what are they
mm.
going to do? They're not really going to put him in either
He
of
needs
those.
35%, right? So
That's what I mean.
I was thinking that too. I'm like, I don't know if that's such a good idea because I think that, yes, he does have less of a split, but I think he's going to be thrown to centre half back for stoppages and
Yep.
then centre half forward. And so what's that going to look like? I don't know. And that's just like too scary. I don't want to be caught with a Gorn averaging, say, 100 as a pure ruck at 640K at best. You know what I
Yeah, it
mean?
could
Like,
be
let's just
15% defense, 25% forward, and then you're sort of like, okay, well, 60% ruck or whatever. Like
Yeah.
either way, he's not getting DPP if you
Yeah.
split
Or
too many roles. So
Mm.
yeah.
that's my big
It's
concern with that.
too many questions for too much of a price. Like if he was 500K, like
Oh,
Grundy is, you know,
easy.
I'd actually be like, well, I think you just can't. You just take that risk. But yeah,
Interesting. Petrarca I didn't really think about, to be honest, until now that, obviously it's mentioned. I'm like, well, with all the, the articles and stuff coming out about them, splitting that a bit more and focusing on finals, and there is definitely a possibility he might get 35%, particularly at the start of the year. Because that's what happened last year. They won all these games in the front half and then they burnt out and then struggled. So I expect them to kind of try and win games, but it'll be a little bit more shared in that first half of the season and then try and ramp up in the back end, which could be awesome for Supercoach. Like Gorn and Oliver and looking at Petrarca in the back half of that year, the last 8 could be very appealing.
the thing
Mm.
with Petrarca though is he going to be a good enough scoring player if he does have 35% forward time?
I
Like
think he will be.
because, well, last year he went in patches where he just absolutely sucked. like, I'm not entirely sure that it's necessarily a good thing. Again, something you want to watch. One, I wouldn't start at all. I don't like
No.
with the intention of getting forward time.
If he's
Um,
forward, how are you not putting him in your side? Any one of those forwards could have an absolute stinker in the forward line.
yeah, I mean, potentially.
Except for Dunkley, of
So
course, the Brownlow winning medalist
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
you know,
So the problem is I don't have any direct stats on it, but obviously in 2020, which is we don't like to use stats from 2020 because the COVID year and guys that played the right role with impact obviously were inflated averages, but he averaged 117 there with 66% CBAs, and that was really was that the first year that he really exploded onto the map because the previous year was 81 average. So
Yeah.
I'd love
Yeah.
to know what that split was, but in DFS, unfortunately, there's no CBAs from 2019. So um, yeah, I just don't know. So yeah, what was the split like when he was averaging 81? Is what I'd like to know. Like,
Mm.
does that and is
not
he
much.
gonna be? Does that mean that he's gonna still approach that sort of 100 to 105 or 110? Because then it means he's a good player. He's going to drop enough. I just don't know yet. It's just too many question marks for me.
Interesting. I don't think Bailey Smith will probably get forward status. I think the best bets are one of those rocks and Petrarca and Boak for me.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
Bailey was what the third highest mid on the weekend. So Libba, Bont, and Bailey Smith were actually the preferred 3 inside, with
Yep.
McRae only had 59%, so a little bit less. I don't know
Yeah,
how
interesting.
you read it. Again, you don't know with Bevo. He could be. All of them could be forward. We could get Bont forward again. Like
100%.
who knows?
Well, yeah,
So
need them
yeah,
to rest forward early, but that's it from us, I think, with the forward line. So really comprehensive look, especially once we got out of was it the 8 or whenever Dylan Moore was, but some really good insight there, particularly that top 6. I think the one thing we can agree upon is the real big divide as far as that top sort of 6 caliber. And again, we're going to roll midfield. So forwards that eligible that have a large chunk of midfield time, or the rucks and the DPPs, which is pretty much where a lot of it comes down to. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know where you agree. Let Swizz know that Taranto is not going to be the second overall. And that's it from us. We'll talk to you next time. DR, thanks again for coming on. And glad that both of us were here to pop your cherry.
Absolutely, boys. It was extremely enjoyable, and would love to come on again at some stage. Thanks for having me, legends.
you're welcome,
Alrighty.
buddy.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
buddy.
Alrighty. Thank you. Bye.